Rob.
Hey, what?
You want some bread for supper tonight?
Absolutely.
We're gonna make some sourdough bread. It's morning right now, so by supper time, our sourdough should be ready to bake and have for supper. So we've been doing sourdough out here in the woods since we got out here. I made my first starter that was designated for the woods out here the first summer, and we've been having the sourdough bread ever since. So this one is actually, we've named Henry because he was born in the Henry Woods. So this has been our starter that we've used. We keep feeding. We've put him in the fridge over the winter sometimes and just get him out when we need him. But when we're out here, he's being used enough that we can just leave him on the counter and feed him and just keep making bread. So we're going to take about this is our starter. It's pretty bubbly and it smells yeasty. You don't want a starter that smells bad, like death. Sometimes if you don't feed your sourdough starter for a long time, it'll start getting a funky smell. You don't want to use a funky smelling starter, or you don't want to use one that smells like chemically either. This one has a nice yeast smell. So I've got about 1/3 of a cup of our starter, and we're going to put that in our bowl. And I don't have a scale, and a lot of people use scales when they make their bread and they get really intricate with their measurements. I just kind of wing it out here. I don't have a scale, so we just let things be what they are, and usually it turns out pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, whatever you're winging, keep winging.
And then I've got a little bit of warm water that I warmed up over the fire. We want to use a little bit of warm water because that kind of helps get the yeast activated. And I'm going to use about a 1.25 cups of warm water and just kind of mix that all in. And then we're going to use about 4 cups of flour. Now I've got several different types of flour out here that I'm going to kind of mix in because we want to do like a whole grain. And I'll probably use some of our dock seeds as well. I got to grind some of those up for this.
Sounds good. I love when you put dock seeds in them.
Yeah. So we're going to use 4 cups of flour. So
you notice here in the off-grid, we have to Ziploc all of our bags. In the tiny home, you never know.
Those little moths sometimes will get in and try to lay eggs in your flour.
Always a good idea to Ziploc your bag.
Or if you've got some big glass containers or something that you can screw down the top and make sure nothing can get into it.
We use a little bit of both.
Yeah, we don't just leave just a paper bag of flour laying around in the camper.
You keep so many different types of flours around, it's hard to keep them all in glass containers.
Yeah. So I'm going to use a cup of whole wheat flour. So this is going to be like it's going to be a thick and grainy bread, which is what we like. A lot of people like just the white bread, and that's okay. You can use plain white flour if you want to, but I'm using a cup of the whole wheat flour, and I'm going to use about 1/2 cup of some rye flour. And I'm going to go ahead and stir that in too. And I just kind of stir it in as I go so I can see the consistency, because you don't want to get over dry with sourdough bread, or any bread really. You don't want to get too much flour in. Put that in there. And then I've got this is spelt flour. And this is kind of an ancient grain that we like to put in there that's got some good nutritional value. We'll put some spelt in there.
About how much of that?
That's about 1/2 cup of spelt. And so now we're at 2 cups of flour altogether. And then it's getting a little thicker. And then I'm going to put about 1/2 cup. This is einkorn flour. And einkorn flour is an ancient grain as well that's not been processed. It's not non-GMO. It's not been adjusted by man. So actually I'm going to put about 1 cup of that in there. I'm going to put about 1 cup of the einkorn flour in there. A lot of people have gone to using just einkorn flour because it is so so good in the fact that it doesn't have it's not been manipulated by man to be something that our bodies don't want. So
and then that's unhealthy for us, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's unhealthy for us to have things that are different from what the Lord intended it to be. God intended foods to be nutrition for us. These are organic things that I have here, so they don't have pesticides. So the pesticides that are on your wheat or your flours that you get, that's going to make you sick. A lot of people have gluten intolerances, but it's a lot of times it's actually the body's reaction to the pesticides that have been put on the wheat. So that's why we choose to use some of these ancient grains, because they aren't overly processed, and we try to use organic when we can. And it is a little more expensive, but it's going to keep you a little bit healthier. I'm going to finish off with some more of the whole wheat flour. And we're just going to mix it and see how it goes from here, because we don't want to get too thick. Here we're just mixing up the ingredients until they just come together nicely. You don't need anything super special here, and then we just take the bread and we kind of stretch it and fold it just a little bit. We're not going to over knead this dough. We're just going to get it to where it's coming together well, and then put it back in the bowl and let it sit there for about a half an hour. Then when I come back and fold it again. As you can see, I'm just kind of working it a little bit, trying to get it to come together, and then I just tuck it under and make a nice little ball there, and then we'll come back later and stretch it again.
Rabbi, are you hungry? Yeah. He said, I have food that you do not know of.
Yeah, and they're like, what are you talking about? You don't have food. We just went in town to get you food.
And he says, my food is to do the will of the one that sent me.
And accomplish his work.
And to accomplish his work. But as you make conscious decisions, if you can align yourself on earth as it is in heaven, and realize that Christ is the bread of life, he is the living water, that we would nourish our spirits just like we nourish our temple. Are we going to put pride into the recipe of our spirit?
Yeah.
Are we going to put greed in there?
Right.
Are we going to put things that are wholesome?
Yeah.
Truth.
So that's true. Yeah. So we want to put wholesome things in not only our food, but we want to put wholesome things in our spirits as well. We don't want to use the ingredients that would cause us to be sick in our food, and neither do we want to put ingredients into our spirit that would make our spirit sick. Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. We've got a Dutch oven that we can put coals on top of, and that bakes a nice loaf of bread, actually. So we can show you how we do that. We're going to get that Dutch oven ready, and we'll have this in about 6 to 8 hours. We should be able to bake some bread. Something that I always do once we get the dough all mixed together is about every half hour we're going to come back and stretch out the corners. Just kind of stretch it out and lay it over itself, and then stretch it, lay it over. Let's stick into the bowl. And this just kind of helps with the hydration and helps with the gluten strands coming together, and just that actually helps to put some air in there so that it makes it nice and light and fluffy, and helps the yeast to work better. So about every half hour we're going to come back and do that, and so that's about a 2-hour process of coming back every half hour and folding that over on the corners. And then you just cover that with a wet towel and in between, because you don't want it to dry out. You don't want your sourdough bread or any bread to dry out, really. So we're going to cover that with a wet towel, come back in a half hour and fold it again, and do that 4 times. Okay, we're coming back for our 4th stretch and fold, and we're going to do this. This is our last time around with this. We're going to try to go to all 4 corners and stretch and fold. This helps to create a good gluten tension and makes a more bubbly loaf. So we're going to do that. Let that sit. I'm going to cover it with a wet towel. I've got a wet, this is kind of like a little cover that we got that's just for bread. Got this good and damp, and we're going to put that over top of that bread and let it sit for about 2 hours or until it pretty much doubles in size, and then it'll be ready to prepare to cook over the campfire. Okay, so it's been about 4 hours since we put our bread dough in the bowl to proof. So proofing is what we do when we allow the yeast to release the carbon dioxide and make the bubbles that cause the dough to rise. So I was thinking about, proof in the Bible. And so we proof the dough so that it proves and that it has the evidence that it is ready to bake. So the same thing is true in the Bible. If you look at Romans 1:20, it talks about the creation proves that there is a God. So faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So faith is the evidence. It's interesting to think about that because a lot of people say, well, I got to have the evidence to have the faith, to believe. But it's actually kind of backwards in the Bible. It says that our faith is the evidence of things not seen. So that's just something to consider. When we think about the word proof, we think about the bread of life, that Jesus is the bread of life, and that we are to hunger and thirst for him. So we are going to take this bread that's been proofing, and we're going to pull it out of the bowl, and I'm going to put it onto, and it's still a little sticky, and that's okay. This is sourdough bread, and it ends up being a little sticky. But we are going to, at this point, add a little bit of our roasted dock seeds. We roasted some over the fire the other night. And so we're going to add those into our dough. And that's just going to give a little bit of a nutty, crunchy, whole grain. We're going to take this sourdough and we're going to pull it and stretch it. And I'm going to fold these ends over. And I'm going to fold this side over. And I'm going to fold this and this, and we don't want to do too much to it. We want it to stay soft, but then we're going to just kind of tuck in the bottom and make sure that I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my hands because it is still just a little bit sticky. Put a little bit of flour on my hands, and I'm just going to tuck in the underside, and we're just going to try to build some resistance so that there's some resistance in the dough, and this helps with the structure and helps it to not fall apart. So then we're going to take this dough and we're going to put this in a basket upside down, and then we're going to pinch that. I take some flour, pinch that, and just kind of bring it all together. And then just kind of almost tie it up like that. So we're going to leave this in this floured, toweled basket. Some people use a basket. I just got a bowl that I put a towel that's just for putting in a basket or a bowl that you flour, and you put your bread dough in it. And that's going to rest in there, and it's going to kind of, when it rises, we're going to let it rise for another hour. And when it rises, it'll rise upward and kind of build that structure that's going to make a nice round loaf. So we're going to let this rise in our basket with our floured towel, and we're going to let that go for about an hour. And we'll come back and put that in our Dutch oven then, and it'll be ready to bake. Now, sourdough is a long process. It's going to be something that's going to take several hours out of your day. You're going to start early, and then you may end up baking at night. Something that you're going to start probably in the morning, and you're going to have to work with every couple hours. Every 30 minutes, you're going to want to try to fold it over, and then you're going to have to let it sit for at least 4 hours to proof. And then you're going to come back and put it in your floured toweled basket. It's got another hour to proof, and then you're going to have the baking time, which is another 40 minutes or so. So when you're planning on making sourdough bread, you're going to take some time out of your day. But that's okay, because things that are worthwhile sometimes take time. And the Lord tells us that we need to be patient anyways. So just know that if it's something that you're like, I can't do that every day, I can't spend that much time every day to make bread, that's okay. You know, if you got a day on the weekend that you can, and you can spend the time to do it, you're gonna have a nice, natural, healthy loaf of bread that you and your family can enjoy, and you know the ingredients, and you know it's good for you.
I love sourdough.
It's good.
I love it when you get time to do it.
Yeah. So we're gonna bake our sourdough bread over the campfire in the Dutch oven. We're gonna let that kind of burn down into a nice bed of coals, and then we'll be able to use that to bake our sourdough bread. So I've been letting our bread proof beside the fire where it's just warm. You definitely don't want it on the fire because that's gonna bake it and make it all dried out and crunchy. So we put it away from the fire so it just is warm. It's not hot over here. Don't overheat your bread when you're proofing it, and you don't want it to be too cold either. It's gonna take a really long time if it's too cold. So this is gonna kind of speed up the process and help it to proof a little bit better. So our bread's been proofing in the flour basket for about an hour. So we're gonna take a piece of parchment paper and dump that out onto the parchment paper. And we're gonna take that bread, I'll try to move it over more to the middle, and we're gonna put it in our Dutch oven. Now this is a Dutch oven that's got the feet on the bottom, and it's got the concave lid that you can put coals on top of. This is just a thing that we found in an old turkey fryer that
that was at the bottom of my turkey fryer. It used to have the handle that would pull the turkey out.
Yeah, we wanted something to raise the bread up off of the bottom of the Dutch oven, just to give a little airflow inside of here and to keep it from burning the bottom. So I'm gonna put that inside the Dutch oven, and I'm gonna put the bread in here on top of the parchment paper. And now we're gonna take this Dutch oven. This is a Dutch oven that's not preheated. I'm gonna put the lid on my Dutch oven. And what we're gonna do is, I don't wanna set my bread in this hot bunch of coals. So I am actually going to bring some of these coals outside of the fire. I'm going to set them out here on the ground, about the size of the bottom of the Dutch oven. I'm going to spread them out a little bit. And I'm going to set this on top of that. And now I'm going to take some coals and put them on top of this Dutch oven. This Dutch oven has been a real blessing for us. We have done a lot of baking and cooking and stewing and all sorts of things in this thing since we've been out here in the woods. And it was given to us by a friend of ours that we call Lammy. Her name is Jill, and we just love her, and she loved us, and we're thankful that she gave us this wonderful gift.
She said it used to be your father's, and he did a lot of Dutch oven cooking, and when she found out you had a passion for it, she wanted it to be yours.
Great, yeah, it was awesome. So we've got a lot of good coals. Rob stoked the fire really good with some sticks that burnt down to make some really nice coals. So we're gonna make sure that it's good and surrounded by these hot, red hot coals, and make sure that we've got enough on top. We're gonna let this bake, let that bread bake for about a half an hour. We're gonna come back and take a look at it, make sure everything's going well. And you might have to freshen up the coals. Sometimes you have to freshen up the coals when you're baking bread in the Dutch oven, but that's okay, we've got plenty. Okay, so it's been about 40 minutes and our coals have kind of died back and a lot of them have turned to ash. So we're gonna check the bread and see if we need to keep it going for another few minutes. But what we're gonna do first is get all the ashes off the lid. And that's kind of our process. And I usually tap it because I don't want anything to be on the edge that might get down into the bread. And on the bread, of course, when you're cooking over a campfire, a lot of times you're going to end up with ashes, and that's just part of it. But I've got this tool here that came with the cast iron Dutch oven, which has been really great. It has this hook on the end that you can use for the handle. And then it's got this like a wrench end that we use to lift off the lid when it's hot. So, bread looks like it's about done. It's risen up good, and it's got those good sourdough cracks. So I think we're gonna pull that out of there and let it cool. And we'll probably have this tomorrow for our lunch. Whole grain loaf and whole grain flour doesn't rise as high as the white flour. We don't like to use bleached flour, but this is going to be a good hearty bread to use for our pizza breads and just some bread and butter.
Yeah.
At the bottom.
Nice work.
Yeah.
Takes a lot to get these things right in a Dutch oven, but these slice up nice for pizza bread.
Yeah. Can't wait for it to cool off and have some of that for tomorrow. God is good.
I don't know about tomorrow.
You better let it cool first. Yeah. It's really good. We really like the sourdough bread with some butter and honey. Slice it, and we'll kind of rub some garlic. We'll toast it up. I'll get some fresh tomatoes and basil and sprinkle some mozzarella cheese on that, and then just cook it in a skillet over the fire.
Maybe we'll show a video of that.
We should.
That is good.
These are the things that we want inside of our body and inside of our spirit. So make sure you're putting good ingredients in your spirit, and make sure you're putting good ingredients in your food, so you have a healthy temple inside and out.